Hundreds of business leaders, chief executives, investors, and advisory organizations started their two-day Africa CEO Forum in the Ivorian commercial capital of Abidjan. The conference anchored on new paths to African prosperity through economic sovereignty, green growth, and industrial transformation. It was the first of such gathering in Abidjan since the global pandemic started in 2020. The curtain raiser for the CEO Forum was a plenary and a panel of discussants that drilled down into some of the biggest conversations around the continent's economy. Arise Exchange show anchor Boason Omofaye is boots on the ground in Abidjan, joining us live now. Boason, good to see you. Good afternoon to you. How is the forum taking off on the first day, and what are the key issues on the table?
Well, you talk about boots on the ground. There are hundreds and several hundreds of boots on the ground here. Look, Reuters is like everybody's looking for a way to get out. Over 2 years of pandemic, everyone's sitting down at home, behind closed doors and out of the offices. Look, the whole atmosphere here is that of like a carnival. The Africa CEOs, they're out here in their several hundreds. The whole exhibition hall, as you can see, some of the movements behind me are all filled up because everyone is looking for, look, we need to make some gains. We need to make some businesses. We need to look for opportunities. We need to meet people. We need to meet institutions. We need to talk to those who can do business and projects and everything else with. So if you ask me how is it taking up, it's been very huge. The main plenary room was all filled up this morning till afternoon for the opening session and the first plenary where you have Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo spoke, as well as the President of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo. So it's a whole lot of folks sitting down here and coming in out en masse after the pandemic for this biennial conference, the Africa CEO Forum. Reuters.
Fantastic. You've mentioned Vice President Osinbajo of Nigeria, Nana Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana. Well, who else is attending and exhibiting, and how are Africa CEOs and their companies, I guess, emerging out of the pandemic and, meeting for the first time in almost 3 years?
You're very correct. This is all about creating new paths to African prosperity. The head of the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector lending arm of the World Bank, Mark Diop, was also attending, as well as the CEOs of big banks, big institutions, including big names such as Huawei. You have those who are coming from across Africa, in Senegal, in Gabon, here in the host country, Côte d'Ivoire. They've always made a very big showing of the various institutions, including Investment Promotion Council of Côte d'Ivoire. You have big names in the telecommunications, such as MTN. I'm just sitting just outside the booth of MTN Côte d'Ivoire here, where they've been accommodating us. So MTN is here. The big names within across industries and across Africa are all here as well. If you look at the electronics, you look at agriculture, in telecommunications, the technologies, in digital space, in investments, the Moody's Investor Services is also here. They have Vista Bank. You have banks from across the continent. Everyone is here making exhibitions and looking for how to look at the next opportunity. Because again, we've got a pandemic and the geopolitics in Eastern Europe on our hands. So this is not a time to sit down as a CEO at home. You need to go out, you need to make deals, you need to find new partners, you need to find new horizons for your businesses. And I think that's why everybody's out here en masse.
And we can see all the activity just behind you, people just going left and right. There's so much happening. So you've mentioned so many sectors. What are the new paths to African economic prosperity?
Well, just to summarize it, the new path to Africa's economic prosperity will be economic sovereignty. Now, this has come at a time when Africa would have to look inwards, and that's the buzzwords here. We saw what is happening in Eastern Europe. We see what is happening in China and elsewhere. So this is the time for Africa's governments to also begin to look inward. That's point one. Point two is how to have what we call a green growth. Remember, Egypt will host the COP, the Climate Change Conference, for the first time in October in Cairo, in Egypt. So it's also a good time to talk about green growth, which companies are providing the path to the energy transition for the African continent across board. That's the second point. The third has to do with industrial transformation. And Abdul Samad Rabiu, the group, the founder and the chairman of the Boa Group, which two of his companies, the cement and the foods, are listed on the Nigerian exchange, was also a major sponsor and a main speaker at this event as well. So it's all about these three areas: sovereignty, green growth, and industrial transformation. But don't forget, Rotis, there's issue around health as well, as far as education, digital transformation, making sure the youth are also involved in the entire transformation process. So it's a whole basket of conversation of what is on the street that everyone is well aware of. But how do we get a new path for Africa's transformation in the middle of this entire new horizon that the world found itself? Global pandemic, we're still dealing with that, and the geopolitics and the war in the Ukraine. Rotus.
Fantastic, Boason. Boason, look, in prior segment, we're just talking with our colleague, Bode Oshosomi, about the Total Energies $29 billion deal in Qatar, LNG. Total had to back out of an LNG project in Mozambique because of security issues. Are security issues going to come up at all over the next 2 days with all the discussions on deals and so on while you're there?
Well, security, whether it's a social unrest, there's an issue right now with security. Again, we have huge population in developing countries, and Nigeria inclusive. So this new report that is coming tomorrow, to be released tomorrow by Allianz Global, will show the level of problems that could come from the fact that there is inflation, there is higher food prices. Food imports globally will be close to $2 trillion this year, according to a report released late last week by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. So there are pressure in which political reforms has to take place on the African continent. And political leaders need to understand that you have a population growth on your hand, you have youth population, you have women and children as well. Then you've got to deal with insecurity, because this insecurity, beyond the usual insurgency, there's a problem of social unrest because food prices are going to go up. People will pay more. They'll get less value for what they buy. There's a whole lot of job very difficult to get. There's an issue with climate change as far as agriculture is concerned. So there's a session tomorrow, Tuesday, on electricity. Then, of course, you find those around special economic zones where you have Lagos Free Zone. We'll be speaking this afternoon at about 3-4 o'clock local time about free zone and special economic zones. Look, Rotis, we need to deal with the issue of insecurity. Is very key, and that is where the sovereigns will come into the entire conversation. Whether it is here in Cote d'Ivoire, whether it is in Nigeria, the whole Sahel region, the northern part of the continent, that entire patch of Africa will need to be taken care of. Then you've got to deal with smaller issues of social unrest at home, which will come if folks are not satisfied with the political process, they're not satisfied with the job creation, they're not finding employment opportunities, and they're all migrating out of the continent. So these are part of these issues that have to be dealt with. Part of the conversation, the CEOs will have to deal with that, because again, the report from Allianz tomorrow will focus on what CEOs of companies in Africa and around the world will have to deal with in terms of protecting and ensuring their businesses against this emerging problem of social unrest that we're already seeing. You saw what happened in Canada, Rotus, when you have some blockade some months ago from truck drivers and what have you, because they protested the level of what they get. So it's a whole lot of problem we have to deal with. Subsidy, for example, you and I know that. We report this every day, in which countries across Africa are subsidizing fuel because we don't have enough refineries on the continent right now to deal with petrol. So between energy and gas, food, security, and fertilizer, there's a whole lot to deal with, and that will be part of the conversation here within the next 2 days, Rotus.
Very robust, Boason. We look forward to you giving us up-to-date coverage of that.